in time, I don't know. Okay. But well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, the last two sessions, I think. So thank you, Joey, for that presentation of TotalX. I did not know there are quite a few projects already. So today, our panel, the title is Tokenization and Palau's Blue Carbon. So if you've been here the afternoon, we've heard a lecture, a talk on blue carbon already, a bit academic and a lot of good material there. We had an introduction from Prakash, on Palau and the potential there is. And so today in this panel, I want to go deeper a little bit into tokenization, but also specifically blue carbon and how we can really kind of explore this opportunity for Palau. So before I get started, I'll do a very quick introduction about myself. So my name is Gwen, and I've been in the crypto space for several years. I'm in sabbatical now, so chilling out and doing nothing, which is great. But I just spent 2 years at BNB Chain and Binance, where I built and led the investment fund for BNB Chain, and I was also at Binance Labs, and really just looking at an ecosystem, working with startups and projects to bring them on BNB Chain. So today I know nothing about blue carbon, right? So that's why I was super interested to really hear from the panelists. And so let's go down the line a little bit. So I would love each of you to kind of do a very quick 1-2 line intro about what your company does and how you're contributing to the general sustainability space and perhaps blue carbon specifically.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Stella, the Chief Product Officer of Carbonbase. So a very quick introduction to what we've done and what we're doing right now. So for the past 3 years, we tried to provide carbon calculation service and also consultancy for big companies like real estate companies, Porsche, like Piaggio, and also like Schneider, kind of thing like that. But along the way, we found that people are lack of incentives to do that. So that's why we actually initiated a preserve to earn model that we will reward people who spend $1 to purchase carbon credits with 1 token, and they can use that token to purchase NFTs and also redeem as a discount voucher or like coupon to purchase food from a restaurant in Hong Kong. And also we found that there are so many things we can do to improve existing registries, from like optimizing the end user experience to integrating IoT sensors to collect data more efficiently, and to using tamper-proof DLT to collect data more, to guarantee the data integrity, something like that. So we're closely working with the HBAR Foundation, like Sabrina just mentioned us. So we're working closely with them and trying to make carbon credits on blockchain as an NFT market, and without writing smart contract ourselves. So in terms of the blue carbons, I would say, like, first of all, blue carbons also is kind of like carbon offset projects, but it actually comes from ocean. And that's why I wear it like this today. So it's green carbon offset and blue carbon offset. Yeah. But anyway, so I would say, Palau actually have very many, like so many abundant resources from the marine system. But the more importantly is we need to find out which can be modified or which can be transformed into the carbon credits, because later, we may talk about something about additionality, which is very crucial to carbon offsets.
Amazing. Thank you, Stella. Joey, I guess people have just heard what you do, but for TotalX, but I think talk about Desmo now.
Okay, thank you. So Desmo is a French fintech company, and what we are doing is actually building an on-chain sweet settlement system for real-world assets. So we care about the cross-border money transferring. And also, we are developing regulatory technology for anti-money laundering and for like small media enterprise easier get funded in a more decentralized way. And we have different use cases based on our platform. So we are more talking about the data rights authentication, and also in the intellectual property application based on the immutable and shakeable blockchain. So like in real estate tokenization and the carbon credit tokenization is actually like our first it's a trial, and we have been successfully doing few use cases in this related field.
And TotalX is the latest one.
Total Ag definitely is the most significant project that I really have confidence that it's very promising and creates a social impact in Palau and even worldwide, because in the Micronesia area, I think a lot of countries they really find how to bridge in the real world economy on chain, but not like only the fully native crypto assets. It didn't really bring a lot of millions to the local people, and that's the challenge and the question I'm still like trying to figure out.
Okay, thank you so much, Joey. Christoph.
Thank you so much. So I'm a founder and CEO of Nomica. Nomica is a company that sometimes I describe as an ESG mining company, which is not always well positively connotated. But what we do is we provide infrastructure for projects, for ESG projects, specifically carbon, but also plastic, social projects, etc., to safely originate this directly on chain, which means we put the metadata Joey just mentioned in his talk directly on chain, which means we have an unbroken chain of traceability. We also have a marketplace for those products, be it carbon credits, be it biodiversity credits, or others, scope 3 insets if you want to get more technical. Our main philosophy is, however, and this is our focus, is to surface the ecosystem services value of ecosystems, including on a country level, and this is what we're also discussing a little bit here with Palau, and we have conversations with the central bank in the Maldives about this, and in Mongolia, to bring to the table this value and make this liquid as well. So in order to do what I think Carbonbase also believes in, is to make the existing or like intact ecosystems more valuable than let's say extractive projects in general.
Thank you so much, Christoph. So let's dive into the potential in Palau. So we've all heard that Palau has seas and oceans that's the size of France, right? Way bigger than the amount of land. And yet this is just, it's still unexplored. It's very, very nascent. We have a few associations already in Palau looking at the blue carbon space. So it's really, really the start of it. So it's extremely exciting. So going to that, where's the opportunity here? Stella, you talked about kind of which part to use the word, I think, extract value, right? So from your experience and looking at what Palau has in its diverse ecosystem, where do you think is the biggest opportunity for Palau in blue carbon?
I think, first of all, so for carbon offset project, it has to be, like additionality I just mentioned. I think this is a really challenge for Palau, because additionality actually refers to carbon emission reduction wouldn't occur without support from purchasing carbon credits. For instance, if there were more mangroves were planted in Palau for tourists to do paddleboarding, and although it will be absorb more carbon emission objectively, but it can't be certified as a carbon offset project because it would benefit anyway. It would the emission reduction would occur anyway due to the economic benefits from the tourism. So and tourism makes up the largest part of Palau's revenue. Yes, true. And so I think it's really a huge challenge for it. But I think Vera actually developed a mangrove forestation kind of methodology, and the methodology is quite new. But we're looking forward to new methodologies come up here. And I saw there is Palau Ocean Foundation out there. They're trying to build their first blue carbon methodology in Palau. I think it might take 1 or 2 years to do that from Vera. But there is another interesting thing is that Queensland government in Australia actually just released create a reef credit scheme that actually they want to improve the water quality to protect Great Barrier Reef and work similar to the carbon credit scheme. And definitely it has their own rules and guidance for product developers to do that. And they must be registered with a specific NGO called Eco Australia Market. And then they can be rewarded with some reef credits. So it is kind of like initiatives taken by government and want to do that, from the top down.
How successful is that project in Australia?
So it's just like released last month. Yes, it's quite new. And from the other hand, I think that Palau runs way faster than any other country in terms of adopting cryptocurrency as national currency. So I think another opportunity is that they can actually build the registry on the blockchain. Because, like on the blockchain, the carbon credits will be showed as NFT kind of format with specific metadata, like different parameters, different locations, different aims. With that specific NFT, and also they can use that NFT to tell a good story. Because I got the inspiration from the conference this morning, and they said only matters is to tell a good story. Because what we want to do here is trying to have scale up the more benefits and more capital without having so much footprint here.
So I want to bring to Christoph, right? So we talk about provenance of blockchain all the time, and something that we discussed and you kind of said earlier as well is that, when we look at, the work that you do, it's all about verifying the origination, the source of the carbon credits. So it goes to something like this where blue carbon is completely new. Australia has tried to do some work. The Ocean Foundation is starting out. How do we really kind of determine the origin of these stories and that these stories are true?
Yeah, so I mean, there are different ways, obviously, and there is also a pretty solid body of scientific research in terms of those methodologies. The problem is just the methodologies aren't standardized in any way, so basically everybody tells their own story. In terms of creating trust around this, I think that's kind of one of the questions we're discussing here. Technology, at least, can to a certain extent bring that in the sense that we can create water quality or biodiversity quality with measurements like eDNA. That's kind of the DNA that's dissolved in the water, and you can find out basically who swam there in the last 14 days. Whoever passed through there, and you can make a baseline and then see what measure.
So is that from skin cells or pee?
It's just from all the cells. I mean, who swam? I mean, mostly meaning the fish, pooping, everything that comes off of you, basically, as a fish, mostly, or a turtle. Well, I guess people too. So, anyways, you can find out what happened there. That's one way, and bringing this directly on chain, this data you're creating. You can create a delta between what happened there 2 months ago and what's happening there now. And then you can correlate that with an action that has been taken. And then you can see, you have this baseline, you have this additionality, you can create that delta. Similar things can be done with infrared from space or drones or other water quality measurements. Sediment in terms of blue carbon, visual sediment checks can be done very easily with probes. So again, you can establish those kind of parameters. Then you can establish deltas, and those can translate into carbon, they can translate into biodiversity. And what's I think really interesting, and also going to be, I'm just going to spin this a tiny bit further, in terms of what's actually getting onto the market. What we see today is carbon that has additional benefits, not just carbon, but also a biodiversity component. They tend to fetch higher prices than just your regular carbon offset per se. And last point, in terms of the origination and the trust here, I think what we always have to remember is that we are doing this inside of a social context as well. And we should kind of refrain from just kind of dropping in tech solutions onto an existing, population, existing also stewardship that's already there. So in a way, blockchain also provides the possibility to integrate ancient wisdom to a certain extent into those kind of origination.
What do you mean ancient wisdom?
Well, I mean, there are usually practices around, let's say, I know it's a little bit from the rainforest situations. There are practices that are agriculture practice or fishing practices here that are actually in sync with nature, and they're not degrading nature. They're actually sometimes actually enhancing it, or certain farming techniques. And these can be integrated as part of the origination story and make it also in a certain way. Since we're talking about story, this also brings value to the asset itself. Right?
It's basically try to quantify these ancient pieces of wisdom into a methodology.
Yeah, or at least integrate them and also, then create maybe social benefits that come from that.
Okay, very cool. And in terms of this then, for Palau, you talked about, having probes looking at sediment and stuff like that. And we're talking about hardware now, right? About assessing and verification. So for that, which would be the lowest hanging fruit?
In terms of sensors?
Yeah, sensors.
Yeah, I would say probably sediment visuals, like optical sediment analysis would probably be one of the most sort of direct ones that would look at blue carbon as a sediment, but also anything that can establish correlates between a parameter that changes on the x-axis, so to speak, and a parameter that changes on the action on the impact piece.
I'm not sure whether any of you would know the stats here, but what timeline are we talking about? Like from day 1 and day, I don't know, 90, month 3, will we be able to see changes?
Yeah, it depends on, okay, so I think we have to distinguish two things, right? We have to distinguish action-based additionality projects that say like we're changing something in order to generate a benefit, and that delta is what we're selling, so to speak, expressed in carbon or expressed in some kind of other benefit, right? The other option that we have is to look at, and this is, I think, something I would suggest looking into here, is to assess the ongoing services that this ecosystem, as it presents itself today, provides to the planet, and assess that value and make that value available to the market. And that would requires a little bit more, in a sense, let's say. And this is why I'm talking about it in the context of a country, because in a country you can have the legislative and let's say international agreement support that can actually make this happen. And if my proposal that we're doing for countries in, especially in the global south, is to make that available as a value, and this is like billions per year, right? So that's a little bit different from like having impact projects that are creating a delta from what it is now to what it is in the future. To your question, though, in general, it's a couple of months, depending on the parameter you're changing. If it's cleaning up water for a reef, it can be pretty quick.
Yeah. So let's go to Joey, because your work with Turtle X, I think, is new, right? And there's various projects Eileen and yourself kind of just talked through in your talk. So for that, are you looking at a specific? How are you assessing? The project, the success.
So first, the Turtle X is a very interesting point. Like ancient times, just like the president is showing you the turtle shell, they call it look as a money. And so I really want to say, where there's turtles, there's whales. So what's lacking in here is actually they don't have a base for bringing out the digital economy. And the digital economy must be highly connected with the local industry, like they have seaweed farming projects, but where the money can provide for the launch, they need the individual fund to launch aqua farming projects. And actually not big money, maybe just like few thousand. So in this way, it's easy, we can do an efficient P2P fundraising and helping this kind of new projects. And they get a start in money and up. Maybe this maturity phase is quite, in special reason, it takes like 6 months to harvest. They can share these seeds into anywhere in this, Japan, in the sushi restaurant. So this would be formatting the agricultural supply chain from financial supply chain to the food supply chain. So what I want to emphasize here is actually when we started like listing more tokenized projects on Turtle X, it's going to bring huge impacts for anyone. They're going to learn how these works, how run these projects in a more efficient way. Not like lending money from the government, from the bank. This has high interest, and in this way, they are the owner. They are a part of the ownership from. Because the projects bring the best benefits is fractional ownership. So everybody can really feel they own the stuff as a proof of existence of their assets.
Which is actually, that part is interesting, right? Because It's that's retail. A person, right, could just go in, individual person. And I think Stella did something also that Carbonbase offers, right? I, as a retail person, I could buy $10 worth of carbon credits. So maybe from your perspective, then, when you talk about Palau and the blue carbon opportunity again, right, and you're talking about additionality, maybe one thing I'd like to maybe to simplify a little bit, maybe Christoph, kind of what you talked about. Another angle to look at is also what is claimed to what will happen, for example, sediment increase, right, or more seagrass increase, and what may not happen, where we're talking about in the green world, like deforestation, right? So, in the green world, the current traditional carbon credits world, there's greenwashing, as there's double counting of carbon credits. And one thing that I think a big problem also happens is that how do you prove a counterfactual? How do you prove that something would have happened, but did not happen because of your efforts, right? So I think that's a very, very difficult problem to solve, and I wonder whether anyone has any thoughts.
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned like greenwashing. So it is also we have a greenwashing, and I think the principle between two of them are similar. So I think there are actually many ways to prevent that, but the most important two ways I want to mention is that first is that we want to encourage project developers to develop high quality, high impact project in Palau, like try to support more sustainable development goals as many as possible, like support no poverty, provide more job opportunities to indigenous people, and try to cultivate a more like gender equal environment for women, this kind of thing. So in this case, the cost of the carbon credits won't be too low, and they can mark their price a little bit high. This is the way to prevent companies from purchasing low price carbon credits and declare that they are carbon neutral because they purchase carbon credits. But on the other hand, they actually emit so much carbon emission, and they don't make an effort to reduce their emission from supply chain.
Or to repeat what you just said, right? So you're saying that this is the baseline for what a typical blue carbon credit will cost, for example. And are you saying that because it also adds on a whole other slew of positive externalities, like what Christoph kind of mentioned, that the price should increase, should be priced in? Are you saying that?
It depends different methodology of how carbon credits are issued. So for example, for mangroves reforestation, it actually costs a lot of money and effort because it requires hardware and also divers to plant grasses on the segment. So basically, it will improve the cost of the carbon credits. And then to make some money, to sustain this kind of carbon offset project, they can mark up a little bit to their carbon credit price, and they can sell it to the real carbon credit buyer. So if I were a company that I wanted to bring greenwashing, right? So I tend to purchase like $10 per ton instead of like 50% per ton, but their results are the same because one carbon credit is equals to 1 ton of CO2 removed. But in the same time, so if the carbon price is too low and companies are purchasing low, like the price of the carbon credits, and they can declare that, oh, we're carbon neutral, we're carbon negative, but they actually didn't try to do anything to cut their emission from their supply chain and making goods for their production. Yeah, and the second thing I want to talk about is very interesting. So there is a mechanism called CBAM, stands for Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So it is actually developed by European Commission. So basically, you can imagine as a carbon border tax, and it urges high emission companies like fertilizer, electricity, cement, something like that, to start keeping track of the carbon emission related to the goods they import. So it will actually it prevents companies, outside the European, trying to move their industry to the places with weaker environmental governance to avoid carbon costs. And also, this is the way to bring all the companies within the EU and also outside the EU kind of thing at the same page when it comes to environmental commitments and carbon pricing. So I think, if they don't meet that CBAM, they will be punished with carbon border tax. So it is kind of like a penalty, and they would have incentive, to reduce their carbon emission for their supply chain, and also they would purchase carbon credits in a reasonable price in EU. So this is something that we think we can, like Palau can think about how can we issue this kind of mechanism to incentivize this kind of production to prevent like blue washing.
Yeah, I just have some piece on the pricing, and I think it's important to understand the drivers for carbon pricing, right? So, but obviously we have the voluntary market, which, by the way, I mean, right now you can buy a ton of carbon offset for 89 cents, right? So it's not even close to 20 or 30 dollars at this time. It crashed since February, pretty much by an order of magnitude. So that's really a problem. The drivers you mentioned as well is obviously regulation, and the EU is pushing ahead here very clearly. That will impact about 50,000 companies in Europe plus their entire supply chains. So that's quite significant. It's not clear how that's going to affect the voluntary market. I mean, it's definitely going to. You're looking at the regulated market in Europe. We're talking about $80 a ton, right? So that's a big difference. But they're interesting, things just to give you an idea of the complexity here. If you're trading scope 3 insets, which is kind of like inside of the industry, practices that can be traded in terms of carbon, you're talking about $150 per ton. Plastic at this point at some point gets to $600 a ton, etc. So what we're looking at here is quite a complex market structure with different diverse drivers. One big driver that's going to come up now is also the trading under Article 6.2 in the Paris Agreement, so the trading between countries, which is something we're focusing on, which will probably drive the price per ton, even on the voluntary market, to probably around $30 or so a ton, this will vacuum up a lot of the voluntary carbon that's currently on the market, and potentially some of the lower quality stuff. So the industry will change quite a bit as a function of that. And I think to be successful in this market, to make sure that we're actually, getting those returns to actually finance those projects, we have to understand this also from a data perspective and understand what the drivers really are.
Okay, so to conclude, kind of last question for everyone, to make it more concrete, right? So blue carbon again in Palau is just starting. Realistically, or from a visual or practical perspective, what can we as individuals see or feel if blue carbon really takes off in Palau, say over the, next 5 years? Joey?
Yeah, I think the most you can feel intuitively is that you see more blue project that's happened around your living space, right? That's usual. You go see trees or some energy projects, and also you may plant coconut trees. But with this enterprise, they try to deceive government and people is that they want to overstate what they contribute to the social responsibility to protect environment. And the carbon credits price varies, and also nowadays we try to avoid blue washing or greenwashing. And the reality is that they actually paying the rights for pollution environments. It's the reality. What they try to purchase carbon credit to pretend they have enough social responsibility. And what really can make this change is we must have a clearly track what's the money going into these projects, and we see the changes here that happens in Palau. Yeah, and we need to really see the project and not just on the numbers of tons of carbon they offset.
Thank you so much, Joey. Stella?
I think the most direct impact is that we can bring more allowance from other parts of the world back to Palau to contribute themselves to this beautiful country. And for example, to implement carbon offset projects, it actually requires a lot of expertise. You need to be a really good scuba diver, right? And I heard that from Palauans. Every Palauan is a mermaid. So that's their thing, right? So they can do it easily, to plant seagrass on the segment, and they can trade coral reefs really better than anyone else if they don't understand, what's the condition below the water, something like that. And also I want to, step back further a little bit and see a big picture is that actually Hong Kong has their own kind of marshes as well, but it hasn't been certified as a carbon offset project because it is managed and also conserved by WWF Hong Kong. So, but although we don't know how much carbon emission it actually helped reduce every year, we don't know the exact number, but I can actually see the how the marshes can cultivate biodiversity by providing habitats for water birds, migrants, and others. And so I did it there several times, and I see like the birds nesting, giving birth to the babies, feeding their babies, spending time with their families. And I believe that, and also Palauans want to leave their families looking at the stunning sunset together, right? Having dinner together. So, and also one impressive story I heard from the staff is that actually they found one of the birds, they put a ring on its foot for research purpose 19 years ago, was found 19 years later, again, in the marshes. And the rarity is 1 in a million for catching the same bird in the same route. So it is really stunning, right? And I believe that, Palauans should have more compelling stories to tell because, you guys live with the mantas, with the jellyfishes, with the sharks, right? You guys have got to have to tell a really good story and interpret it as a kind of like intellectual property. This is our Palauans. This belongs to us. This is what we have. This is what you can only find in Palau. So that's kind of like the message we want to convey to Palauans.
Okay, so more coconut trees, more Palauans, scuba divers come back. Christoph.
So yeah, I agree with what has been said. I would also caution maybe to not reduce Palauans to kind of like their environment.
Yeah.
And so you have to always be careful. We tend to romanticize that from the outside and maybe have a little bit of a, I'm guilty of that myself, obviously, and we have to be careful not to have a neo-colonialist attitude towards what you guys should be doing. Having said that, I think what we're discussing is very relevant. And from my perspective, what can be done very immediately is, so we're talking with, UBS and Allianz, for instance, who are really interested in blue carbon as an asset, right? So if we are able to get together and originate some really high quality, a safe, traceable, auditable blue carbon, there is demand for that, and I think that's something that we can, if we can streamline that with the local authorities, if we can streamline it with all of us as a as a consortium perhaps or whatever, we can actually bring this to the big institutions. And we don't, let's not be afraid of them in the sense of that what we're doing is we're redirecting sort of extractive capital to regenerative capital. So that's what we're doing. We're going into those institutes and we're kind of, hollowing them out in a certain way from the inside and using the tools that we have at our disposal in collaboration with the country.
Okay, that's a great ending. Thank you so much. So thank you, Christoph from Nomica, Zhou from Desmo, Stella from Carbonbase, myself, Gwen from OnQuestion. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my God, this is one of my favorite panels because not only I'm a collaborator of Turtle X, but tokenization is the next step for Palau. So any questions from the audience in terms of tokenization of Palau's blue ocean, blue carbon, or renewable assets? No?
I'm curious. I would say, carbon credits is a positive. I wonder how does the blockchain help it, and is it actually necessary to have it on the blockchain versus just trading it online on any other platform?
So I think blockchain was aiming to solve some questions like data integrity, because right now, so I like perhaps some of them have heard that Avera actually has some like kind of like PR thing in Red project that they over issue the current credits that should have been issued. So that's kind of like we need to ensure the data integrity, because right now all of the data were stored in a centralized database on their server, and we need to have a like distributed ledger that we can put the data on the chain that everyone can access at any time. So this is one aspect. And the other part is that, so right now, the MRV stands for Measurement, Report, and Verification process is very manual. Like people have to send specific people to go on the site and take down on their notebooks, saying that, hey, this is, how much weight is the wood before cooking, and this is how much weight after cooking a meal, and take the delta and calculate with specific formula. And this is how they collect data and also monitor data. And what we want to do on the blockchain is that we want to connect IoT sensors and also satellites. Because we're in Hong Kong, we have so many friends finding IoT companies in Shenzhen. It's like a Silicon Valley in China. So there are a lot of IoT suppliers that they can improve and also implement the IoT sensors, like to test CO2 in density, humidity, wind speed, temperature, something like that, and they can be implemented to a specific area or a specific clean stove to monitor data directly and also upload the data to the blockchain. And blockchain can, we have the formula on the blockchain, they can automatically calculate it and send the data to that. So that's kind of like what blockchain technology can help.
Okay, just
Are you convinced?
Partially, because obviously an IoT sensor can just connect to any centralized database. And I think there's also solutions for data integrity, but I think maybe the data integrity piece can be the more compelling one. I just would like to understand one.
Yeah, it's probably, you're right. I mean, can it be done with no blockchain? Of course it can be. I mean, that's how we did stuff before. It's just going to be cheaper and safer with blockchain. Blockchain in this case, in this particular case, it's just tech, right? So it's just easier, better, quicker, and also the products you have, everything's natively on there, and then you can connect to all kinds of other applications. And since you already have it in digital format, you have a certain amount of transparency. It just brings down the per unit cost of a carbon credit in that sense, right? So, and it helps to improve the quality overall. It's not a magic bullet that solves all the problems, but it increases the efficiency of the entire system by quite a bit.
right. Let's give the panelists a round of applause. And we will have another whole day long conference tomorrow on the ocean. That would be a fantastic time to talk about this. So thank you. Yes. So now let's get to the last